Hello, and welcome to the Reality Podcast. This is a podcast for health professionals built by nurses. Now, generally, we're going to talk about innovation and what's happening in the world of healthcare. And we do all of this through our subscriber feed, which is Bundle of Rays. So just head over to www.bundleofrays.podia.com to find out more. Otherwise, let's sit down, have a glass of wine or a coffee, and see where the conversation's going to take us this week. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reality. So this is a nursing podcast where we endeavour to talk to real people in real situations doing real things. And this week, we're speaking with Meg McCowan down in Tasmania. Now, Meg, I don't know how to describe Meg. You read her profile and you understand her career, and she's got layers. I won't call her an onion. That's not really a compliment, but she's definitely got depth to her career, and hopefully can provide a wealth of information and interest for our listeners. So, Meg, I'll let you introduce yourself. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I like to think of it as a Forrest Gump life rather than an onion, but like a box of chocolates.
There we go. The all the nice.
That's it.
So when I first to Meg, it was around Antarctic medicine. So maybe we can start there.
Sure, it's as good a place to start as any, but it's kind of in the middle of everything. So yeah, I've been working in Antarctica, and last year I spent the entire winter season in Antarctica, which for us is from a November to a November. So it's actually a year. We just trick people by saying it's a winter season. And that was as the expedition medicine doctor for the Antarctic Division of Australia. So I've worked for them for a while, since about 2012, but that's the first full proper Antarctic winter that I've done. And it was
Yeah, I've done a little bit of work with the oil and gas industry in Europe, and I went up to Tromsø and Hammerfest and sailed across to Svalbard, which is essentially its North Pole. And you know, I stayed on the boat, we had a look around and we carried on, but to spend 12 months on a pole, what were you thinking? Like, honestly, like, how was it?
It was indescribably difficult. And it wasn't from the work. The work was really easy. I love that work. It's really just keeping my medical facility ready to roll if something happens. So lots of maintenance and scenario practice, and working with my lay surgical assistants who are actually trained to be diesel mechanics and electricians, and getting them up to speed to be scrub nurses and scout nurses and anaesthetic assistants. That part's great.
That just comes across as good sport.
Yeah, that is great. That's fun. They like it. We dress up, we do the things. It was just that small group of people for such a long period of time that became the problem. So
yeah. So for my experience, skill fade is a real thing. So essentially just saying, you know, continue doing scenarios, ongoing education for the context of the setting. You know, I don't even want to think about how arid and extreme a winter season, i.e. 12 months in Antarctica would be, but to maintain that would be very challenging. And then, yes, confined space, fixed group of people. It's like a social experiment, really, isn't it?
It's like those experiments they've done for the Mars mission. We've already done them. We should be going to Mars. I've got a few people from that expedition that I could volunteer to go to Mars, but that being left unsaid. The other part of it that's difficult, it's the distance from home, it's the monotonous food. The chef that we have is great and he's inventive, but there's only so many ways you can reinvent the same ingredients, which we're stuck with.
Yeah. Some of the, like I was in Afghanistan, I think that was my longest contract, was 3 months. I was away. I was there in 2012, and you know, same thing. At least there they had like an Indian, they have like a pop-up, you know, curry night or this sort of variety. And some of the ships I was on, I used to bake a bit of bread, so I just bake like a focaccia or something weird, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" You know, the variety of the monotonous Groundhog Day situation. But yeah. It does take a sense of willpower and determination to get through that, because 3 months is one thing, but for me, what I found was that, you know, I would get up of a morning, take my son out, get a cup of coffee. You know, these simple little tiny pleasures that we have, or just the fact that the facility is there to do something like that. when you're so remote and extreme circumstances, that's just not possible.
Well, it is in a way. I did start to meet with the field training officer every morning at 9 o'clock for a coffee because we both happened to do that. We both had jobs that really, in the middle of winter, when we're not going outside, didn't require much other doing. So we did have a bit of a coffee club going for a while.
Okay.
It was just two of us because everyone else was busy, which made us feel quite guilty. But we still did it. But the milk is powdered and the coffee gets old and sweats inside the bag and it's been frozen and thawed. So it really wasn't a coffee club that would ever have got a star rating, and you wouldn't recommend it to a friend.
That loyalty card's going to get smashed, isn't it? Stamping consistent.
Yeah, we had no choice.
I also teach a bit of ALS, and on one of my courses, probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, there was a chap who worked on a shipping vessel. I think it was tourism, and they'd go from the bottom of Argentina across to Antarctica. And anyway, he was a doctor, and he was updating his ALS with us. And he was saying, giving me a story about they had a patient who was attacked by a bear seal, I think, or some kind of seal, and had an injury, and they were camping, and he had like 2 days and had to hold this patient there. You know, straight away in my mind, I've got like this giant seal biting like a, you know, patient. You're there on your own. Like what's some of the crazy, you know, surely something absolutely random had to happen across a 12-month period.
No, nothing happened. Nothing happens on my watch. I'm an anti-shit magnet. Nothing ever happens. You put me on a boat, nothing happens. You put me on a station, nothing happens.
Okay, all right. So you just the club, do some scenarios and carried on.
The only thing that happened around me was at another station. So the Russians did a medevac one day, and they were being very secretive about their medevac. They needed to get someone back from Vostok station to, I think they were flying them ridiculously long distances. I think they took them to New Zealand or something. Yeah, they did. They brought a team from New Zealand. So it's a really long way to do it out that way. And we could have potentially, as Australia, helped them quickly fly across to our runway and fly out to Hobart, but they wouldn't involve us. But they needed to use us as a secondary airstrip on the sea ice runway that we'd just groomed for the beginning of the next season. So they did have to ask, can we land there if the weather craps out? And we had to give permission, but they wouldn't tell us what had happened to that patient. But we know that the season before that someone got stabbed at that station for revealing the endings of the books that his workmate was reading from the library. So I only assume that something similar had happened because this man that was being medevaced did have some sort of surgery has happened to him, and he requires a lying down medevac. I was like, he's probably been stabbed for eating the last piece of cake or the smallest thing.
So let's go back to that social experiment, human nature situation, right? Okay. And the Russians dealt with it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. See, but that is that, you know, a lot of people who work in Australia work in mines and different remote areas, and it's a massive industry, right? And that randomness happens. You know, that it really is a thing, and that's what people have to be prepared for. So you can go and play Sony PlayStation and work out in the gym every day, but one day something really crazy is going to happen, and you're going to have to be ready for that. Yeah, that's nuts. All right, so Antarctica was a bit of a trip. Outside of that, you're obviously a very skilled professional.
Yeah. So the title that you're looking for, that you're probably searching for this word, that what is the description of the sort of doctor that I am and what group am I in, is a rural generalist. Rural generalist,
exactly. That's
which is quite broad. And some rural generalists have very specific skill sets on top of their GP skill set of perhaps obstetrics, delivering babies and doing that side of things, or anaesthetics, and they will do their GP work plus they'll anaesthetise people at the local hospital, or they'll do anaesthetics by retrieval medicine. They're GPs with anaesthetics qualifications.
Yep.
So my special skill in my rural generalist world is remote medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I can work solo anywhere with a piece of string and a stick. Mm-hmm. That's what I say. Like, I don't need much.
Some people call that Meg, yeah, but yes.
Yeah. And that's coming from a background of having been a vet for 12 years. So when I don't know what I'm doing and there's something in front of me and I don't understand what's going on with the patient, I just go back to that first principles of working it out from problem lists and working it out from differential diagnoses, and really going back to my vet days. The animal can't speak to me, unconscious patient can't speak to me, and away I go.
Yeah, fair enough. You've got to call upon all the skills that you need at the time, right? So that's cool.
So that also lends me that surgical capability as well. So when we're in Antarctica, we have to be able to perform surgery if it's required and the anaesthetic at the same time, and also be able to run the laboratory and do the actual run the machines that are doing our tests and interpret the results. So, and x-rays and dental work, like all of that stuff, which is quite foreign to a lot of GPs as they're upskilling to come with us. It's a lot of work to upskill. You don't need to upskill a vet very much.
No, fair enough.
We do all of that stuff already.
Yeah, and one of the social myth, I probably dare say it's true, but if you do a stint in Antarctica that's for a decent period, do you have to have your appendix out before you go?
Only the doctor. So the doctor doing a winter season needs to be appendix free because of that one time the Russians, bloody Russians, had a doctor develop appendicitis on station and auto-appendectomy, is that the right word? Auto took his own appendix out with a little bit of local anaesthetic and some help with a mirror.
Oh my God.
With a fair bit of unconscious passing out in the middle of everything. Like he was in and out of consciousness just from the actual doing of it. But because of that.
He'd do it. It got done?
Oh yeah, there's photos. It's a famous story that you can look it up. There's a journal article written and he wrote all about it. And there's photos of him holding the mirror and sort of semi-reclined in this sort of dental chair sort of setup. And because of that.
Cool. I nearly cried pulling out a splinter. This guy's cut his appendix out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is crazy because if I got appendicitis, which I can't because I've had my appendix out, in Antarctica, I would just stick a tube in it and drain out the pus.
Yeah. Sure.
And that's life-saving. He didn't actually need to go to the full hog of doing that, but he did. It was in like some many decades ago.
Wow. But you know, that is the seriousness of where you are though, isn't it? Those things, there's no plan B.
No, and that's the other thing to point out from that story is the fact that when something happens, we try and learn from that. And we build our capability around the actual real things that happen. So we have in our mind things that could happen, but we know the things that have happened. People have fallen down crevasses, people have fallen off cliffs, and people have become hypothermic, blown away in blizzards, got appendicitis, all of those things. And we need to be prepared specifically for them and then think about the random things that can happen on top of them as well. Yeah. Accidentally getting pregnant, having a baby on station. We've got a full kit for delivery. We can do a cesarean section. We've got a humidity crib and nappies and formula.
Oh, stop it. An Antarctic baby. Oh.
I know. It's all well and good if it goes well.
Yeah. Well, 12 months, you get plenty of time to cook it. It's,
I know.
Can happen.
No, it's definitely, and that's based on things that have happened before. We have never had to deliver, but we definitely have had pregnancies down there.
Yeah, sure. Part of human life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but at the moment, so I'm chatting to you, you're based in Hobart in Tasmania?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're right at the bottom of the mountain there. Yep.
Are you practicing medicine at the moment, or are you off with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm practicing. So I do some private work in the Midlands of Tasmania once a month, do a weekend up there in the little rural hospital. That's great. That speaks to my rural generalist hat. And then in Hobart, I'm medical director of a medical service that has a contract with our local primary health network to look after the vulnerable Tasmanians in the after hours period. So in the good old days, 3 months ago, we would get in our box-backed ambulance mobile GP clinic and we would go around Hobart visiting spots where people could access the GP bulk billed and on the street inside the truck. It's well set up. It's a big box-backed ambulance, so it's pretty roomy in there for 3 people. And we would treat patients. Now, since COVID, we're not necessarily going out in the truck, but we're doing it by telehealth. So we have telehealth bookings, anyone can access those every night. And we have an emergency shelter called the Safe Space that we do phone into every night to see if anyone needs help. And that's the way we've been modelling it since we had the COVID.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I up here on the Sunshine Coast, I've worked quite closely with two just wonderful ladies up here who work with Sunny Street Medicine. So if anybody of our listeners haven't looked at Sunny Street, that's something you need to do. But essentially what you're saying is you're going to homeless and vulnerable people who probably live on the street or live in tough times to make contact where, you know, they might have mental health support, they might have, you know, possible social work housing support, but actually there's this huge gap where they don't really have a lot of medical support. So diabetes, you know, screening, just general GP type appointments are completely lacking. And your service and the Sunny Street service, they're just hitting the nail on the head and saying, well, hang on a minute, we sort of have this gap medically that these people just don't sit within, but they're recurring, frequent flyer, you know, people we need to look after. Yeah, which is just, that's one of the reasons I also reached out to you, because of that relationship with Sunny Street and the service that you're providing, which is just amazing. Yeah.
So I know Nova and Sonia only through social media and messaging, but they've been a huge support. So since I've come back from Antarctica, just to help me understand how to approach the service and sort of get it to a point now where we can do more. Like we're doing a big contract right now for the state government to assess the needs of every homeless person presenting to each safe space across Tasmania. So this is a huge step forward.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's so needed. You know, once you scratch the surface and just see what's actually underneath, and you've got people like Sonia, Nova and yourself who are doing the hard work on the ground, the rest of society kind of looks around and says, oh shit, we need to get behind this. So it's a sudden
aha moment, I think, for the government. I wrote a little 8-page document called COVID Care, COVID Protect, COVID Prevent, and it was all about what the 3 prongs of helping homeless during the COVID crisis, and from that is this response. So it's quite pleasing.
Yeah, that's good. And it's good to see the government taking action with that, because I lived and worked in the UK for 8 years in central London, and I do know that over in the UK there was a push to try and assist or sort of formulate a solution to help homeless people for exactly that type of reason, is that COVID then puts a magnifying on these sort of vulnerable groups about how we're not providing a service to them, and we probably should. Yeah, so that's incredible. And then you've also, you know, you're spinning plates sort of situation. You've ended up as a finalist at the Telstra Businesswoman's Awards.
Yeah, so that's just finished up, and I didn't win my category, but I was a finalist in the for purpose and social, what is it? It's up here. For purpose and social enterprise. Yeah. The ladies that were in that group were fairly inspirational. It's been great. And that's actually not for my street medicine so much. It's more for the charity that I started for the medical students in Tasmania. Okay. So the medical students were having a crisis 2016, 15, 14 and 13. We lost a student every year to suicide. Wow. It's only a small cohort, they're only 500 strong. So to lose a student every year out of 500 students was ridiculous. So I kind of got a bit angry about that and said we need to do something, and people agreed that we need to do something, and then I decided we need to know why life's so crappy for the medical students. So I learned about this idea from Berkeley University in the States, where there was a group of students having a similar problem in the classics faculty. So they're learning archaeology and all things Greek mythology, I don't know, classics, things that I don't understand, but their group, a very disadvantaged group, and they were having definitely horrible social disadvantage, and they were having students die from suicide. And what they did was they pulled their tax returns one year, the graduates, and made a little slush fund where students can just ask for money for any reason. They don't even have to explain what for. And by doing that and giving them these small microgrants, they learned what the problems were, and they learned and understood the disadvantage, and were able to address it a bit more specifically. So that's exactly what we did. I couldn't get anyone to pull their tax return. Those doctors have very deep pockets. Yeah. So my dad actually footed most of it. My dad, myself, and a couple of rural generalists from Tasmania popped some money into a fund, and we just started giving grants up to $300 to the medical students. Just flick me an email, I'll flick you the money. And then they started talking about what their disadvantage was, and I understand now it's just basically they're cold and hungry. If you can keep the students from being cold and hungry, they thrive.
So a chicken palmy is the solution.
It is. And if you need a chicken palmy, you can just go, I need $50, and $50 comes your way and you can go for a chicken palmy.
Yeah.
And it's just taken people from that bottoming out because 3 bills came at once and can't concentrate, can't do my part-time job and study and blah. It's just an awful situation to just have that lifted and keep working towards your end goal of becoming a doctor. And we have not lost a student to suicide since we started. There's been none.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I know. So I'm hoping it's because of that and we can continue on.
I'm sure it's contributed. That's such a great idea. You know, I did a podcast this week with a group of nurses from Arizona. And, you know, the protests are going on there at the moment to reopen business, and the nurses have been going out and counter-protesting. When we talked about, you know, COVID essentially is like a war against the virus, that type of thing. But where I'm going with this is that, you know, ultimately what we've really found is that, like, in a war, you know, you think of a soldier who goes out and he's always checking side to side on his team. You know, in healthcare, you know, I think about this, and, you know, I've worked around in different roles, and how often have I done that and just looked left and looked right and made sure that my wingman or my wing lady's there with me and they're okay, and we're moving forward in the way that we want to move forward. And, you know, this type of a program really does help with that collegiality and that support, because, you know, the shit that we see at work and what we put up with, you know, we've got physical violence, we work in a really dangerous workplace, like people like yourself who are extreme are put under significant psychological stress, environmental stress, and then we come home to our families. We have normal life stress, you know, my family in particular, particularly stressful. You know, where I'm going with it is that we do need, this is, you know, such a great thing to be looking out for each other. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think, you know, when people are studying going through that process, it's just, you know, you're learning about life, and there's a lot of mental health history that people already know of, that those stresses can impact on you, specifically in medicine and law, and there's a lot of family pressure.
Yeah, and a lot of the students at UTAS medicine as well have come from rural backgrounds, so they've had to move from their small rural town down to Hobart. So expensive down here, and those pressures are huge, and they might be the first person out of their family to go to university, and everyone's got this great expectation that this student's now going to be a doctor, not only the first person to go to uni but a doctor, and that's been told to every family member and every friend of every friend that this is happening, and the pressure is enormous.
Yeah
It's awful.
Tough.
But hopefully we're making a bit of difference.
Yeah. So what happens for you next in the next 6 months? Obviously, the old COVID has put a bit of spice on everybody's life, but for Meg.
Yeah. So I'll be working hard on the homeless intake assessment project, and there's I'm open to other ideas, and there's a few things in the pipeline that could possibly happen, but we can't talk about them just yet. But definitely, this homeless intake assessment of needs is going to be my number one goal, to do it as well as we can. If we can do it well and thoroughly, it'll have far-reaching into the future consequences for the people that we meet. So it won't just be our one instance of meeting them. It will hopefully sort out so many options and opportunities for them to have their best life, which is now the definition of health for me. It's no longer being free of disease. I've moved way on from that. Having the best life we can within in the little bag of tricks that we've been given that's called life.
Yeah.
We're not going to get everyone off the alcohol or free of drugs, or everyone free of their psychotic thoughts, or even taking medication for their schizophrenia, but we can get them the best options and the best opportunities we can to be the best that they can, and that's my definition of health for them.
Yeah, you know, I'm an intensive care nurse. You know, I've worked in ICU for about 12 years, but since I started my education business, I tipped over into emergency, and you know, generally the chaos is crazy. But you know, when you're on a night shift and it's 3 a.m. and you've discharged someone and you know that they're homeless, you know, it's actually illegal to discharge someone home with nowhere to go. But you know, essentially most of the hospitals that I know, even the big tertiary hospitals in Brisbane and other ones in Queensland, just give these people a blanket and pop them into the waiting room to wait for services in the morning. And everybody knows that they're just going to walk out the door and go into the dark, you know, and that is not supporting the best life That is not, and all of us know it, but there's just no solution at the moment. And that's something that Sunny Street and people like yourself are working towards, is that follow up, bring them, getting them housing solutions, having an ongoing full primary healthcare loop that they can jump into that gives them the ability to have their best life.
It's exactly how we're leading right now from Tasmania. We've got this whole safe space emergency shelter that we started back in December with Hobart City Mission and Salvation Army. So it started just as an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. affair where you can come and sleep and have something to eat. Has now been funded to go 24 hours a day to be the gateway to all of the services. Kaboom. And in 3 different locations across the state. So if this works, it's as simple as that. You have a place where you can randomly come in ad hoc and ask for help.
Yeah.
And the help is there and it's funded. That's all it takes. It's not really rocket science. It takes some money and it takes a space to do it. And we've just suddenly come up with that right now. So we fast-tracked our safe space to 24 hours a day. Away we go. We're starting next week on Monday.
I suppose the challenge is that distribution of the message. And, you might have someone who's in a peripheral area who's doing it tough to get them to know, and that word on the street about what's there, building the trust and getting people in. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Really cool. Yeah, because when I was
That's exciting.
I walk around at winter and, it'd be 2 degrees and people are on a cardboard box. And, I've said to this.
It's so cold here in the winter. Like, it's bone achingly cold. You do not warm up. So I remember an interview with some people living rough a couple of years ago, and the question was asked, what's the worst thing about living rough in Hobart or in Tasmania? And the chappie said, not having access to showers. I never warm up, never. Not once in the day am I warm.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Psychologically, it's like having that ongoing irritation would just build. I couldn't see how you could wear that off. Yeah. That's terrible.
No, another chap said to me, I used to have work and I was working as a labourer, lumberjack type situation, and I was successful and my life was going fine. And fast forward 1 year and I'm living on the street and I've been thrown in the gutter. And I always thought one day my mettle would be tested. I just didn't know that society would throw me in the gutter as the test.
Fuck.
I know. So I spend a lot of time when we're out on the street in tears. I'm really probably not the best person to do it. I'm so, I just get this horrible empathy. I guess that's a good thing, but it's not when you're constantly in tears. Yeah, really awful. So this is a great step forward.
Yeah. Oh, good. And just when listening, she is smiling and happy at this. So she's.
I am a little bit teary thinking about that chap. I hope he's doing all right.
And it's the same thing. I have these cases at work and you see people and you want to help them and you just hope that they're okay, and our system, we're on the front line, the cold face of our system. And it's that system that essentially you're trying to help rebuild, that I'm essentially a cog in the wheel of, that we just have to hope that these people as a society manage to have this best life.
Yeah, I'd really love to start some in-reach. I haven't told my boss this yet, but on top of all the things I've put on our plate for the next 6 months, I would really, really love if anyone that has ever had contact with us on the service or during this new time end up in the emergency department or the hospital, that we get a phone call and we go and see them while they're in there.
Yeah.
I know that the homeless service in Western Australia is wanting to do more in-reach, and that's Andrew Davies over there. Dr. Davies talked to me about that idea, and that's an amazing idea, because that coordination and that, what's it called? Non-fragmented care. I can't think what the opposite of that is. Just having coordination of your care and not being episodes of care missed. So sometimes I only find out that there was an acute admission for a amphetamine-induced psychosis event by looking on the My Health record when I'm just checking something else. I was like, oh, hey, you've had a bit of time in the hospital the last few weeks. 6 admissions actually. How about we talk about that? But if I could actually be involved at those admissions, it stops them being separate from this. the patient is one patient, not a patient that goes to the emergency department and also someone that goes to the homeless shelter and also sometimes someone we see on the street. They are the same person.
Yeah.
And missing
a good discussion about data integration and how as a healthcare service we implement data across different streams, and being a subspecialty really
it is there. It does end up on the My Health record, but to only be involved by reading that later is not to the best interest of the patient. If they saw that there was care enough to come and see them because we were concerned about what's happening with them right now, I think that could be life-changing.
Yeah, well, it just gives that service the fluidity between that moment in time in an acute centre and then that primary healthcare moment as well.
And we might be able to break a cycle. Coming with the police 3 nights a week to the emergency department is not anyone's want. No one wants that. They're not choosing to be like that. But just, building that rapport and building that trust and the support that you could give if you're inreaching. And I think inreach is the next thing on my list, but I do have to quickly duck to Antarctica over the summer.
Okay.
So it might be a next year project.
An inreach from Antarctica back up to Hobart.
Well, I can, because you can telehealth anywhere. Yeah. And if there's one thing we've learned from COVID, it's that we have the resources to do medicine from anywhere, and we do it from Antarctica. I Zoom from Antarctica and present at conferences from Antarctica. There's no reason you couldn't do patient care from there as well.
You don't need to tell me. I sell virtual reality, so I'm on the hustle with VR. So if you think Zoom's good, wait till you have a crack at my stuff.
I know, right? So I actually do look forward to the day where I can be an amazingly good-looking avatar in a room with a patient,
I hate to
20 years younger.
Yeah, I hate to disappoint. The new program.
What?
Yeah, wait. You take a selfie of yourself on your phone and you upload it so the avatar looks.
No. Sorry, no. The whole appeal to me is that you get to create that avatar.
Gotcha. Virtual Meg. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Turn around. I got it. Yeah, nice. Okay. Just you a headset that you could use down in Antarctica. Your Wi-Fi is decent?
Well, we actually do have VR in Antarctica. So we're working with NASA at the moment with all of these environmental enrichment programs. And one of them is this VR system that they created for people that are in space. Yeah, it's for the space program. So when you're in space and you can't access green areas and outside and by the water, all these scenes, they're really cool, except for the one that's basically a room full of cats that in the middle of winter I just wanted to get up and kick all the cats. It's really bad.
Oh my God. Well, if you set down there, all you need to do, the application's free, just download the app and we can do what we're doing now, but we do it in a virtual space and you can upload 3D models of organs and different things. So when you're down,
wow.
You can, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. We should talk about that because we already know we can do it. And the internet is better. At Macquarie Island, we have broadband by satellite.
Yeah, okay.
So that would be the ideal place to trial anything. But even on the Antarctic stations, we've got really such advanced internet to when I first went down there, which was like dial up between 30 people. And now it's everyone's streaming Netflix at the same time and it's still working over 19 people.
Yeah, okay, super. All right, well, so let's tee that up. But I just want to point out to everybody just how particularly cool you are. Because do you know what you just did? You just did, these people from NASA, we're working with them about...
Oh, I forgot. You might have read some of their work. I don't know. You should look at Professor Sawyer's work at the moment. She's been COVID testing whole towns in California to get an idea of the epidemiological, like the load of virus in these towns because they have no data because there was no testing. And then testing equally sized towns and villages elsewhere to compare the disadvantaged to the non-disadvantaged population. It's amazing work. And she's a NASA professor.
Working with NASA professors. God damn it.
She's my friend.
The level of guests we get onto the show is just the stratosphere, let alone on a pole.
I know. It's just normal for us because it's the collaboration with the remote area. So it's the isolated, confined environment stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they did it. Didn't they? They had people in tents in Hawaii in sort of like a lava hot area for the Mars project.
Oh, they were in proper, like a pod.
Yeah. And that
was amazing.
Yeah, that was.
They wanted to kill each other. Remember, the doctor was the hated person.
I'm not. Hey, I'm a nurse. I'm just saying. I'm not saying anything. Yeah.
She took a didgeridoo into a small pod. Of course, she's hated.
Oh, I love it. Obviously, she couldn't.
Well, it's actually unethical for a female to play a didgeridoo, as I understand culturally.
Oh, okay.
It's an instrument that the men use during cultural ceremony.
All right. I don't know how that's going to go down on Mars, but Elon Musk would probably have a few things to say about that.
Yep, he will.
Really appreciate your time. This has been a good chat. So when I see it pop up on the radar that you're packing your bags to head to Antarctica, I'll flick you a link to sort out the VR, and we can do a little a secondary follow-up.
Lots of things have to happen in a line for my trip to Antarctica this summer because there's so much uncertainty. So we'll keep in touch. But we have a saying for Antarctica: we are not there until we're there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Even if we think we're on the ship going to Antarctica, we are still not definitely going there.
Or the weather would just be so nuts down there as well. Yeah.
We can be redeployed. When you're at sea, the AMSA can just redeploy you to help someone and turn you around, and all sorts of stuff happens. And then flights are a nightmare. Ice can melt.
Yeah.
It can be weather patterns that go on for weeks. And so we're not there until we're there.
Surely you've patted a penguin, right?
Not that anyone knows about.
Yeah. Okay. There's penguins around. Is it like you get up in the morning with this 9 o'clock coffee and no penguins?
No, you would hope so. But in Antarctica, it's very austere. The penguins don't like it very much. We have a few for a short period of time, and then there's no life from March to October. Nothing, not a seal, not a penguin, not a fly, not an insect, nothing but us.
Really? See,
yes.
Because of the polar bears up in the north, I thought the penguin populations down in the south would be half decent.
Yes, but they hang out in the sub-Antarctic. So at Macquarie Island, which is one of our other stations, and I've lived there for a year, different altogether. David Attenborough every day, giant petrels, albatross, penguins, elephant seals, the lot.
That's what yeah. I bet
that's what you're imagining.
Is it? See.
And I didn't pat them, they patted me.
They came at me and looked me in the eye and went, "Come here, human."
If you're just really quiet, they'll come right up to you and go, what's that? And look right into your camera lens.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, stop it. All right. Well, maybe if you're down there, all of our listeners can jump on a canoe and go and see you. Thanks very much for your time, Meg. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries.
If you do head back down to Antarctica, you make sure you stay safe.
Yeah, no, I always stay safe unless it's really dangerous, and then it's just a don't tell mum situation and I just get on with it.
And the reality is it's probably the Russians coming in to use the airstrip anyway, so don't give away the end of the film or the novel. They'll get crazy.
God, honestly, don't eat the last piece of cake.
Yeah, or wear a flak vest, one of the two. All right, Meg, thanks very much.
No worries, thank you.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for another week. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're enjoying the content and what you see here at Bundle of Rays and through the Reality Podcast, just head over to our subscriber feed, which is www.bundleofrays.podia.com, and we can continue to chat over there. But for now, you stay safe and just keep going. Cheers.